Hello all and welcome to the channel. So today I am taking a look at all those economic games from last year, 2024. Now I ummed and armed about a sort of top 10 list, and honestly I don't think I could have actually made a top 10 list. I genuinely would have thought, wow, these games are amazing. Mainly because sometimes it's hard just playing all of the latest stuff. It takes you a year for that to all have cycled through. So a lot of games come out at Essen, and by the time you actually get them or get hold of them and actually learn them and then play them, it could be like, now or April or even coming up to summer of the next year, so 2025. So, some of these games I'll talk about that I haven't necessarily tried but want to play and would probably see them in some form of list or other. Others just weren't good enough, but I still want to talk about them and just, let you guys know what's out there, what might be of interest to you. So I've made a random list of what I've played and some that I'm looking forward to, and I'm just going to randomly choose them. So top of my list here, we've got a game called Smoothie Wars, which I have brought to you guys on the channel. Now this for me was actually a really surprising and pleasant play. It's very streamlined in the sense you've got this board, this island, and you are as players trying to sell these smoothies at the right price at the right time in the right location. And you kind of simultaneously reveal, you see what price, you see what demand there is out there, and you sell to, whoever has the cheapest, and depending on how many quantities you've sold, and if there's remaining demand and people have quantity, they sell it at those price. Now, it's nothing groundbreaking, it's pretty much demand and supply with this pricing mechanism, but it works. It's got a really nice player counter as well. And for me, it was like very curious as to how simple it sounded in the description. And I thought, this probably is just going to be really, basic and there's not going to be a lot of enjoyment, but it achieved one of those very difficult things in the design, which is making a game engaging based off a really simple rule set. And it did that. It's just a shame that I don't think this game is going to be, highly publicized. It's not going to get a big release. It's not going to be spoken about, but I'm here to say Smoothie Wars, if you see it or can get a copy, give it a go. It's definitely up there for economic gamers. And if you're in an educational setting, I would absolutely put this in a sort of classroom setting. It teaches a lot of, basic concepts, but really well, and it's engaging and would be fun for a higher player count. So yes, Smoothie Wars. Next, we have Plutocracy Passengers. Now, this is the expansion to Plutocracy, which I played a few years back. I'll be honest, it was a bit drab. You're going around this solar system, you are trying to spend your time wise. I can't remember what it is. Power is time, or time is power is money, something like that. Now, I enjoyed the theme of it and was intrigued to give it a go, the original. But when I actually played it, it was very rigid. You could only do so many things, and you played the situation. So it was situational. You did what seemed best at the right time. And sometimes you might get caught out and you're like, there's a runaway leader aspect here. Now, the Passengers expansion, it does change things to actually make it an okay game, in the sense you've got these variability added with the powers and these different notions of you can hyper race across time and actually jump speed to various areas. You can change up resources a bit more, flexible on that. There's just added elements to the game, which just made it interesting and more approachable, that I'd actually want to give it a go, and it was worth the 90 minutes. So for me, the Passengers expansion, if you do own this game, is definitely an add-on. So yeah, go and have a look at that one. Next, we've got Gigawatt Energy Revolution. So I enjoyed the original Gigawatt. It was a bit big for what it probably needed to be. Got this nice European map, and it was nice in the sense of you're meeting the demand and supply of energy of various nations. You had more of a sense of you were building that nation. You had these little renewable sources, these little tokens. Are you going for solar? Are you going for wind? Probably a mixture of things, nuclear and hydro. But the game just dragged on a little bit, and it felt very similar from game to game, just depending on what area you're going in and those relationships you've got with the external markets. And this one, though, is a smaller box. It's card management, but it does the same concept of managing a nation's energy. Now, this one I like because it probably plays in about 30, 40 minutes. The player count works with, I've played with like 2, 3 players, and I like that. It's quicker. It's still giving you the similar artwork, the similar vibe, similar theme there. and it's got some interesting concept. It does get a little bit rinse and repeat the deck. There's not that much variety in there, but there's enough just to keep you engaged with like, right, I'm storing, a bit more cards. I've got the capability to get more cards, or I can, have a reduction or a re-roll of the dice when the solar dice, the dice are roll for the weather. So it's a nice game. Now, again, you're going to probably struggle to find this one. It was handed to me as a copy to review, and I believe it's just from their website you can purchase it, and it's more for a business setting to actually give to businesses to better understand these concepts rather than the mass release they had for Gigawatt. Well, I say mass release, it was funded well on the crowdfunding, but I don't know many people who played that or talk about it. So if you like that sort of genre, go and have a look at this one and try and get a copy. But yeah, it's a nice little smaller game. Would I call it a filler? No, but it's got enough meat to it to keep you engaged. The next game, which I was buzzed to try and get a play of this, and it featured highly on, I think it was my Essen list, and it was Foundations of Metropolis. Now, this is kind of a re-implementation of the Rome version, Foundations of Rome, and this one I really enjoyed. But I'm kind of umming and ahhing whether how good it is or whether it's a game I want to keep. And what I mean is the notion is very abstract. You're placing these tiles and you've got a host of tiles in front of you, and everyone has a matching set of these. And are you going to place them out to develop your retail, your revenue attaining through that, generally more money? Are you going to put them out for victory points and population to expand that and go and get sort of more points than your competitors over the rounds? Or are you going to use these sort of government buildings and get these nice synergies? So there's lots of interesting things there, and how the board evolves is great as your opponent does this and then you're sneaking in this sort of tile there. But what I really like is there's layers to this, there's depth. You might go on a retail strategy and put, you retain lots of revenue, and opponents are basing their decisions off what you've placed. But then actually you've sort of second guessed it, that I'm only going there temporarily, and then I'm going to expand that number 2 size plot to a number 3 because I've gained plots. So I like how you can then affect the board state and it changes, and then your opponent's like, hold on, I've just used this building to go there and I haven't got the capacity to upgrade it to a plot 2, so it has to stay there, because you can only remove stuff from the board if you're going to a bigger plot size, which is very, very clever. There's also sort of different areas you're focusing on. So you've got the whole auctioning. So you've got this little battle to like have enough money at the right time to get the plots you want. And that's key, because getting the right plots is the tactics in this game. But for me, I've played it, what have I played it? 2, 3 and 4 players, and they all work well. I'd probably say it's a really good tug of war game with 2 as well. Actually more engaging than I'd anticipated. But I'm just a little bit done with it. I've probably played it 5, 6 times now, and I'm like, it feels very similar. I'm doing the same things. It's kind of like playing, it's abstract. So it's like playing something like, chess, for example, in its rudimentary form. But do I want to sit there and just get really good at this one game? Probably not. So this is where I kind of see this as a game you'd maybe bring out every now and then. It is easy to teach, easy to learn. You could definitely take this to a sort of game and night gaming group and have a lot of fun with it. But for me, I've got games like Acquire. I've got games like Shark. I've got games, not that I own anymore, but I play Big Boss. So I've got a host of other games that I prefer for that group dynamic. And Foundations, it is a solid game, but for me, I'm just a little bit, the shine's off the apple. But I would highly recommend giving it a go. And it's a really nice economic abstract game to own in your collection. Right then. Another game I was absolutely buzzed for, Nucleum Australia. So this is the expansion. I've had a lot of fun with Nucleum. I felt like there was misgivings over the balance of certain areas of the board. And adding Australia, my first play was, I don't see the benefits of this. But 2, 3, 4 plays in, it was like, wow, I don't think I could play the original map. This just has a bit more balancing with, you can go around with the ships and access different areas easier. The way the actual, the Nucleum and accessing that through the mines is slightly more inland, so you're kind of progressing there, and you've got Tasmania and you're sort of heading down there just to get an edge up. I didn't think it was that strong of an area just to go to, because, I assumed it'd like give you so many more benefits. But yeah, just the board changed it for me. Yes, it added a few extra elements and they were okay. I felt like it was a bit convoluted, but just having a different board that was more balanced just escalated the game for me. And especially with Praha and the double points in the original game, it felt like every game, whoever got there first or whoever was racing to get there kind of had a big sort of advantage on the points. So absolutely, if you like Nucleum, you need this expansion. It will change the game for you. I kind of am done with the game in general though, mainly because it's such a beast to set up. It easily takes like 45 minutes to get that to the table. And there is additions with the Nucleum Australia expansion. You have to take certain tiles out. And unless you're set up for that game constantly, you never want to play the base game, fine. But there's still certain cards, certain rule sets. And just having a really clear overview would be handy, which is probably some out there. But I'm just done with the game in general. It just takes too long. It's a lot of exciting stuff, but I haven't played it like, 9-10 times. It's very similar as to what you're doing. And I think you have to enjoy the routineness of just doing that and enjoying those heavier games. And that's what it's offering. So for me, I'm probably done with it, but really well done expansion. Next, then, a game that did really well at the UK Games Expo, Windmill Valley, and I really enjoyed this game. It is, in essence, you are going out there competing over these sort of tulips. You're trying to store them. You're trying to get these little bonuses. You're trying to turn them into more tulips. You're trying to process them with the water levels. And it's basically like getting all these different synergies. So you can do one thing that improves this. And it's got this fascinating wheel, this windmill. Well, is it a windmill? It's the cogs type thing. And as these move around, you're trying to synergize what actions work with other actions and when you can make the most of two actions at once. So it's a mind boggler and fascinating and a real pleasure to sort of think, deep in this game. That's what this does. It, in essence, is a quicker game, which is nice. There's not many of these sort of quicker, sort of strategy, heavy, involved, engine building type games. 90 minutes, I think, is a realistic playtime. But I felt like on one of my games, I'd actually completed my board with all the tulips. I was like, well, what else am I doing now? I'd actually managed to achieve everything. So that raised question marks for me in the sense of, why would I want to play that much more of this game if I've already seen everything it can offer? But it's a fun experience, and I think it's one of those to have that, it's a bit of a teach, not massive. The iconographies work well and symbology, and it is an exciting game, but for me, I'd play it again. Would I want to own it? No. I just think it's one to keep an eye on and well worth giving a go. So yeah, Windmill Valley, lots to like there. Next one is Oranges and Lemons, which was at the UK Games Expo, brought there by Richard Denning, and it's a good game. The artwork, I'm a bit sketchy on, I'm not too much into this sort of medieval sketch drawing type look, but the actual gameplay was okay. It's simple, it's rudimentary, it's this worker placement sort of snake and who goes first in what order to get, all these various actions and locations you can go to around the board. But it was simple, you're getting this resource to turn it into that resource to go and fulfill this contract. So nothing groundbreaking, and it was nice to give it a go and experiment it, but I just think with the artwork, and the artwork's great for what it's intended to do. It's based off the nursery rhyme of the St. Clements and all this stuff in London, so it works, and the board looks fine. But for me, I just wanted a little bit more. Something like Pillars of the Earth, a striking image of a board with thick artwork and what have you. So just missed a beat, that one. So for me, yeah, that's on the borderline. I would play it again, but I just think there's a lot more highly strategic games out there for the time and investment you're putting into this. Next up, we have, well, technically this is 2024. I was probably talking about this game in 2022. And it's called Star Tycoon. I do like this game. It's a lot of engine building. It's a nice theme with this whole galactic notion, and you're developing your engine. You've got this little business and you're trying to expand that corporation onto different planets. There's a lot of nice things to like with the flow of the cards and this market where, the price of resources changes and it is rather variable. There's a few things that limit the game. For example, you try and get one of these, I can't remember what they're called now, but they're kind of these corporations at the bottom which are separate, and you need so many resources to get one. And then when you get one, they allow you to get that colour of corporation free moving forward. Really powerful. But there's lots to like it. It's a small package. I think they've done a really good job. And yeah, technically 2024. So yes, have a look at that one. Next, we have a game that was probably not my usual go-to in the sense of it's not trains, it's subways, and it's called Terminus. And not my usual art style. It looks quite convoluted on the board and a lot of networks and stuff. I like a train game, but it just doesn't feel like that. It just, the colour schemes and all these options at the top of the board. But it was a good game. I was really excited with my first couple of plays because the actual way you go around this kind of, I guess you could call it a rondel, the action selection, and depending, you can skip as far ahead as you want, ahead of your competitors, but you're only going to go around like 3 cycles before the end of a round there. So you're going around and you have to decide, which action do I want first, and sometimes you get caught out because you needed the resource first and you've passed it to then do the action you wanted to do. So I like that. There's lots of interesting options. Is like this sort of closed economy of the resources, and you take them in the columns, and then other players are like, I wanted more resources. So how you utilize the resources is really fascinating, and how you attain these actions and use them at the right time. The board though was like, okay, I'm just building these networks and trying to score points with area adjacency and majority and hitting these goals, and the goals are okay. I just felt like some of the stronger goals, if you're in a position where randomly the goal that's available suits the style of play you took, and you might not have even known that, then you kind of got a big advantage, because there might be, say, 20 points on offer for hitting this condition, these areas in this part of the board, and one player's like, great, I've actually hit that, and that's an easy one for me. Or everyone else is like, how am I going to make these points to win this game? So I think there's some balancing issues with the scoring and some of those contracts for me. After 2-3 players, I was like, what's new? What's different? We tried the solo mode. I tried adding, you need the solo player, the dummy player, to participate in the game. I didn't find much involvement from them, and it was a bit distracting going, right, they're going 3 up here, 2 there. So I just don't think it's a game I'll be that interested to try again. It's a solid design, it's well made, and if you're into that sort of strategic view on a subway and the lines and making bonuses and things, something similar to like Barcelona, I'd assume. It's very similar to that. Then you might enjoy this game. But yeah, that was Terminus. Now, the next game didn't even class itself as economic on its Board Game Geek description. It's industry. So I have to keep an eye out for these industry games. They sneak in every now and then. And this was called Salton Sea, and probably one of the highlights for the year. Now, I'm not saying it's the greatest game ever, which is why I've found it hard to make this top 10 list. But it's a really solid game. There's lots to like in here. Really small box and heavy, and lots of content, and you get lots of bang for your buck here. And the concept of this brine and your this very layered structure. You're getting the brine, you're placing it under your board, you're then trying to extract it, avoid these rocks because they do damage to your machine. You're then trying to turn it into various other resources. I can't even remember the names now, geothermal, something like that. And you then spend that money you've made to go to the market or turn it into other things. And you're trying to get better value shares and invest, to get more value, more money from the game. Its best point for me, there was the management of the money and the cards. The cards were dual use, so you can use it as money or use it as actions, flipping it over. So that was fascinating. I haven't seen that in many games. And for me, that was probably the highlight of a mechanic for the year, is this notion of, right, I've got 5, I've took this really nice card. It lets me, say, reduce damage by 3 every time, or whatever it may be. But it's a value 5. But hey, I've only got that 5 and this 1, and I need to spend some money to buy this to get that up. And I don't really want to spend this 5, but I have to. So the denomination of the money and the breakdown versus the actions was incredible. I really enjoyed that. Now, there was some flaws with the game, and they're very minor. You had things like the score track was absolutely horrendous. You decided to place your score track in the middle of all these moving pieces. I've mentioned that in my video. I have done a review on this. But in terms of how it looks, the cover art, the actual theme throughout, super, folks, really enjoyable. Now, I did try it 2 players. I've tried it 3 players. It is longer than you'd like, so don't go into this thinking, oh, it's a small box, it'll play like 90 minutes. It's going to take you over 2 hours, 2.5, up to 3 hours on your first play, learning everything. But was the juice worth the squeeze is my question. I'm getting into 2.5 hour zone, and I'm like, I'm kind of done now. I've made all my engine. We're near the top of the share track. We're all doing marginal things. Yes, I've had fun with the actions and the money and those crunchy decisions throughout, but is it worth 2.5 hours? So for me, I've enjoyed my plays. I just don't know if I want to play it that much more. So yep, Salton Sea, definitely one of the highlights of the year. We have got Asian Tigers. I've literally just played the last few weeks, which is why I've held off on this list. So Asian Tigers, a lot of buzz, some criticism over how it looks and the art, and it's very spreadsheety. It's a solid game, folks. Now, I'm here to say, the first play, you're going to have a tough time. There's a lot of things to take on board. You've got tracks on tracks and various rows and columns you're trying to achieve and spend this influence. And there's a lot to absorb as to how you're going to make the most points. And it's not obvious, you're going to get this news market in the middle. You're going to go up various tracks. And we made a few mistakes on the rules. So I've played it twice now, and it was 2 players both times, and I enjoyed the second play a lot more. Now understanding the first play of what's happening, I was like, yes, I want to try this again. I understand how to get these points. And I had a lot of fun on the second play, but it did bring question marks over the player range and the player count and what time length this is actually aimed at and who this is aimed for. So I typically play most games 2-player, occasionally 3 players, and it works at this level. It's actually a solid game for that, but I think this game is more built for 4 or 5 players. You know, the designer is someone who brought us Nippon, and that's a very dynamic and, you know, area control game, which this has very much similarities to that. It's area majority, and I felt like the true joy of this game would definitely be at sort of 4 players, and for me, I just don't tend to go to that because it's a long playing time. And I can just play better games, you know, maybe, you know, 18xx or Power Grid Stock Companies or one of these larger ones. So for me, it's a good game. I like what they've tried to do. You kind of oversee all the spreadsheet stuff and all the blandness, you know, after you're involved in it. I do wish they'd have put a bit more theme out of it. If I'm going to Singapore, I want to look like it's a country or it's got a bit of, you know, the flag, national flag there, just all very melded into one with the yellows and the greens and the very subtle. So they could have done a better job on some of the components and the board myself, but there's a lot to like here, and I definitely think it's worth a play at least. Right then, so some games that have been delayed and I'm just waiting for. American Mogul, when are you going to come out? You know, I've played Mogul, love that game, and probably no one knows about it, but I brought that on the channel. Very business orientated and developing your global corporations and this majority over the globe as to where you go. So this is an American version, a few tweaks. So we want to see this game this year. Market share, another one by Photius, who's got a YouTube channel as well. I'm looking forward to this one. Where is it, Photius? We're waiting for this game. You know, I've praised this game. It's got some really unique pricing mechanism, so hoping to see that next year, or this year, should I say. Some other games which have come out, curious to play, or maybe I've played them previously, is Tonga Bonga. So I had a reprint. I'm skeptical because I really want to try this game. I love the look of the original game, the colouring, the board, how it, you know, it's from the 90s and very simple concept of these little ships going out and you're trying to race to get to certain locations. The time and the effort and the resource you spend to do that is weighed off against the costs, and you roll these dice. This reprint, I'm not so sure. It kind of, the board is modular, so it's separated up, so you bring it together, and it just seems like these big creases. Maybe once you start playing, it doesn't really matter, but I was looking at it going, it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. So for me, I still want to play it, just probably not this newer version. Vegas Showdown's had a reprint this year, and I've played the original a bunch. I like you know what that game does. It's a family audience, well, not necessarily family, but just, you know, you can play with your folks-in-law, and it's just straightforward. You're building your casino side of things or your kitchen side of things, and you're trying to move in this hotel and make connections and get these VPs, and it's an interesting auction mechanism over, right, you bid that, a minimum bid's here, and it gradually gets reduced as the tile stays there longer. Who's bidding for what? And you got, you know, limited scarce things you can do, but make this puzzle work. I've heard this game, the reprint, it looks very similar, an up-to-date sort of modern cover art, which I was a fan of the original one anyway. So yeah, Vegas Showdown, reprint, go and check it out. Next reprint is Craftwagon. Played the original. It was a bit blue, I say a beige game, but let's say it was a blue game. And lots of nice things to like there. Wasn't the most exciting with some of the artwork, and I had these really outdated old cars, but it was a solid design, and I respect it for that. The reprints come out, love the look of it, lots of reds, yellows, really vibrant colours. So if it's got the same sort of notion of the previous game, very buzzed to give that one a go. A few other games then. Pampero. I gave this a go at the UK Games Expo. I had like an hour, you know, tutorial and playing it. I didn't like it, guys. It just was not for me. It was too much going on and not enough reward for what I was investing into it. You know, I'm at this part of Uruguay and I'm going over here and I'm building, you know, this infrastructure, or there's a little digger coming along, and I'm like, oh, come on, guys, like this is slow. I want more stuff to happen, and then I'm getting this slight upgrade on my board. I'm like, what does that even make sense? So I respect any designer who puts their heart and soul into a game, and you can see that it comes through. They're very proud. They've thought historically about it and the notion of Uruguay and renewable energy. But for me, I just don't think I want to invest, you know, all this money on the expansions and the setup of it and the time and the learning of it just to have a game that for me didn't seem that enjoyable. So that was my 2 pennies on that one. If I can pronounce this, it's a Turkish name, Inkilap. So I believe this is out. Very buzzed to what I have spoken about. It looks like a really interesting industrial design. Have no idea what it plays like, but one that caught my attention, so that came out 2024 as well. Algae Inc. So the buzz has been building on this one. Maybe it's because they're hard to get all the copies and people are just buying it, so out of print prices go up. But I like the concept of you developing your business. You're trying to be the best in this algae industry of these various sectors you're involved in. I can't remember too much about it, but I just know it has some good engine building, some good ways to make money, and lots of heavier decision and crunchy things to get involved in. But yeah, Algae Inc. Hopefully I can find a copy somewhere at some point. Steam Power then. So yeah, Martin Wallace game. He's done lots of these before. Doesn't look like it's offering loads, but it looks like a nice production and the components there and the style and the design. So I'm curious to try this one and how the factories work and the network lines. I like things like Steam and what have you. So, it's called Steam Power. So the original Rails to Riches and all those type of games. So curious to see what this brings, but haven't played it yet. We have got a game I would love to play. Have I got the time? No, not with young children and a family, but Railways of the Lost Atlas. I am absolutely loving what I see here. Now, I'm getting slowly more and more into the 18xx genre, using the website to play 1889 and Chesapeake and learning all these games. A super website, by the way. But Railways of the Lost Atlas, it dawned on me, it's got a lot more flexibility, a lot of variety. There's these mountain passes you're going through. There's the game state can change and lots of interesting aspects. So it feels like they've just offered more to this package. So for me, if you're an 18xx fan, this is one you need to have on your radar. And finally, a game that was called, it's the same name, but it changed its art style for the better. It's called Stevens. Now, I've seen a lot of videos out on this recently. The original one, no one was looking at it. It was a picture of a chap on the front looking sideways and it's making glass or what have you. And I was like, okay, I could jump on board that. But it changed the cover and all of a sudden, everyone was talking about this game. Curious to see how it plays. People are praising it. So yeah, Stevens, that came out 2024. And that, folks, is all of the games. So not a bad year. Out of most of them, I could probably make a top 5. That'd be really passionate to go, guys, you need these top 5. But yeah, some of the big hitters, Foundations and Metropolis, you must give a go. Salton Sea is standing out above the rest. Smoothie Wars, believe it or not, is probably up there. Asian Tigers has got a good shout. Windmill Valley on that first play, really excited on that second play. And then I've kind of, dwaned off that. But lots of games then. Hopefully some of these names you can go and research, have a look, and let me know how you get on. Enjoy.